Yeah, so you were just asking, I think, like how you determine basically what's in the actions.
Yeah, and how you kind of maybe you know what you want to do, how you specifically conceptualize it,
Hmm.
because I have to think about it for a long time. So
Uh, okay, so it's pretty much like the interface to the application that you're exposing to like any user generally of their own orbit. But if it's like an agent that's meant to be accessed from multiple ships, then, exposing it to anyone.
okay,
So essentially, it's like the interface to that you're trying to expose for people to use. So, for example, let me just take one I used like this morning. Like I wanted to use metadata store
hmm
because I had like an extra, like Rizrook had made an extra chat in like my group, and it wasn't clearing, even though he had deleted it. So I knew that was because it was in the metadata store, which links groups to the chats inside them. So I was like, okay, probably if I can like go get rid of that in the metadata store, then it'll be gone, and that did turn out to be the case. So the way I went about figuring out, what will metadata store let me do
hmm
is I go to their SIR file. So there's two ways to think of this. One is what do I hope they'll let me do, and two, like do they let me do it? And if you're making the app yourself, this kind of goes in reverse, which is you're like, okay, what do I want to let people and maybe myself do?
okay, that makes
Right.
sense.
So in this case, I was hoping they had something like,
Delete,
remove,
right?
delete, like exactly, like just delete this resource from the group. Right. So there is sir metadata store.hoon, and I look at it and I'm like, okay, sweet. It has this metadata action remove.
Okay, and it gives you.
Okay.
Okay, I see.
And I'm kind of guessing already before I even start that like metadata action will have like, some kind of type in like the mark will be like implemented by the mark.
Okay,
So what I do then is I see down here, they're like, okay, metadata update is either an action or one of these extra things. This is kind of a common pattern where you kind of unify another tag union and put extra tag union stuff on it. Okay, cool. So then my next thing is I'm like, all right, I'm almost certainly going to end up wanting to. Uh, I'm almost certainly going to end up wanting to like poke the thing. Let me just hmm, okay, Zon and copy R back 43 Zon to Zon. And, okay, I should probably make a script for this. Okay, so I'm in here. So, probably I'm going to end up wanting to do something like metadata store and then some kind of custom mark they have, and then this thing,
hmm
right? Like remove group path resource. And I'm already seeing here, okay, what's an MD resource? It's an app name and an app path. App name is just a term, app path is just a path. So that would, look something like, um, and if you like look at these inside debug, you can see them. So let me just open up this thing here. So then what I do is I usually will like go to mar and be like, okay, what is there for? Okay, there's a thing metadata action. Okay, cool. So there's some I can make a mark called metadata action, which means once I just figure out the right format, I'll be able to type this.
Yeah. Okay.
And then I look and I pretty much expect them to use this definition. And sure enough, they import, you know, metadata JSON library, everything in it. I'm already kind of guessing that'll import the SIR file just because that's like such a common pattern. So I
Okay.
look at metadata json.hoon. Yes, it does in fact include all of metadata store, the SIR file.
Okay. Okay.
Okay, so that's and then I go back to the mark, and I'm expecting it right here to like I'm expecting that it's gonna just be like, okay, yeah, if it's a noun, um, just run metadata action on it. So basically, just cast it to metadata action.
Okay.
So this is all like a long way of confirming what I probably could have just guessed if I looked at the SIR file, which is like that I can do metadata action and then type remove and then whatever I just need to figure out their format for group names. So one way you can do that is by using debug. Let me just I have like the commands saved up here that I use. Um, So here's like, okay, so I want to go ahead and oh, actually this won't work right here. I think it's actually like a good thing to see. So let me just go into my actual ship. Okay. And I'm just gonna like now I'm gonna like basically run run debug on it. And if I look at this debug command, all I'm doing is I'm like I've already looked at the state of metadata store inside right here, and I'm like, okay, it has group indices, which is a jug of group path to MD resource,
Okay.
meaning like most likely that's gonna be jugs, right?
No, but I
Oh,
know
so
what
jug
tap does. It takes ordered pairs and makes them a list. So I'm guessing.
exactly. So jug is like a specific kind of map. It's a map of something to a set. And it has a couple extra operations that let you basically say, here's my map key, add this element to the set located there.
Okay.
Does that, so
It
for
does
example,
make
if I,
sense. Okay. Go ahead.
I'll
Go
just,
ahead.
I'll just find it. So jug, does it show its things here, like what it can do? I'm not sure. Um, where do they put those? Anyway, there's a thing for it. It's a little I used it in a different app. It's a little annoying to find, but basically Jug has like a set of things to be like, okay, my map is of group paths to sets of MD resource.
Okay.
And so let's say my group path is timluc-miptev the collapse or something like that.
Oh, it'll be
And
the.
then it'll be like, and then I can there's a function that's like add this element to that set of resources.
And those would be like the groups that ship runs. Is that right?
Exactly. That would be like so that would be the resources that group has.
Oh, okay. All right.
Right. So like all of the chats it has, all of the like links it has, all of the other stuff it has.
And so the group. Okay, I see. The group path would be the group, and then the resources. That makes sense. All right. All right. I was just getting a little lost on group path because
Yep.
the group
Oh, here
path
it
isn't
is.
to your ship. It's to.
The group path is to the group, the
Right.
name of the group, right?
Got it.
Oh, here it is. So jars and jugs. I forget. I should like literally forget. So jars are, let's see. Okay, a map of lists, and a jug is a map of sets.
Okay, and then what makes an MD resource a set? Just so I'm clear.
Nothing makes it a set, so it says it's a set of MD resources. So
Oh,
if we
okay.
look at so an MD resource is just this kind of like chat at this path,
Mhm. Mhm.
and then it'll be like like a set of like all the things there. In fact, we should just take a look at it by like looking at what happens if we run any of these commands. So what I'm going to do here is I have this command metadata store debug. I want the state, and then I basically get to run this this whole expression against the state. So we know this. So for example, if I go up to right here, I see the state has a group indices space.
Mhm.
So I say get by group indices, and then just I know this group path exists because I've looked it up, and
Yep.
so I just get that, and so that's presumably going to show me um, what it does here, which is all of these things.
Okay. Okay.
So that's pretty. And if you want to, and again, this is like kind of useful to go into because like so much of so much stuff in Gall is like kind of figuring out data you have and how to work with it.
Yeah.
In these cases that I do think it's useful to go into like debug a little bit right here. So basically, what I can do in the interface, this is like the debug program that Pelfin wrote. So I'll just go to like metadata store, and every app that has a debug interface, it lets you query its state right here. So instead of having to write this like thing of this cell of state and then a quote like a string or a chord
Right.
of what's there, you can just run the expression here. So here I'm actually just doing this get by group indices ship timluc-miptev the collapse, and that'll show it in a cleaner format. So notice that this is a jug where, in fact, actually, I could even probably cast it to like jug of. I don't know if this will work. Group path MD resource. Yeah, it doesn't because it doesn't have group path in
Mm-hmm.
scope. It's essentially running this. I would have to let it get imported. But regardless, you can like we can look at this again, and we could cast it to that. So this is like it has app name chat app path is this app name chat app path is this, right? And this is just all of these resources. MD, it's just a set of MD resources that are
Okay.
associated with my group. Now, all of that is by way of saying that once I kind of knew the group, like, so we go, if we go back to our SIR file, we said to delete something or to remove, you need to know the group path
Right.
and the resource. So I know my group path is like ship timluc-miptev the collapse. My MD resource that I wanted to remove was chat, and then this one that was actually on Rizruk's ship, and then it was called burn after reading. So I ran this, and then that chat was deleted.
Okay. Okay.
Okay, so I'm just it sounds pretty long, but really the most of my process was just going to the SIR file for metadata store and being like, okay, cool, they have this action. Let's just make sure, figure out what the mark is called,
Okay.
and most likely the mark will be like named something similar.
So you kind of need to, building an app from the ground, think about what your state's going to be, and then work backwards into, well, no, work from there
Yes,
into what actions you want to build.
correct. In fact, a lot of the guys like at Talon will just say is like a lot of the work is just figuring out what is in your state, even if it's not that big.
Okay. And then,
Right. So here we have this like not that large group of things, but just knowing this is the state that you're going to manipulate. And then if we go down here, we can see the pokes that it has. On poke, it's like okay, it takes either a metadata action or a noun, and then that's going to like dictate a lot of the stuff.
okay. And then, so two more questions quickly then. When you were, one of the homework assignments is define your state in SIR. Is that the stuff, like going back to metadata actions SIR file,
Hmm.
is that what's being defined at the top there?
Yes, yes. So you have your actions, but then here, basically, how would I say it? They have like if you look at the state, it's actually made up of
Those
group
guys.
indices, those guys, and those do use a little bit some of the declarations in SIR for app
Oh,
name, MD resource. So
okay.
if your state only uses kind of standard things, that's fine and great. But most of the time you'll probably either have some new type, like they use MD resource to kind of put together resources in this way, or very often you'll just want to kind of alias an existing type to show what it does for you. So here they have group path as path and app path, which is also an alias for path.
Okay. Weird. But okay.
It's not that weird. It's not that weird because it means you can look at this and be like, oh, I know kind of why they have multiple paths here.
Group path, app path. Why would app indices for a group? There are multiple
So
apps,
basically, app indices. So app name is something like, in this case, like chat,
right?
publish, links. So it's basically saying, if I say, I want chat, it'll give me all of the groups and all of the apps in that group that are from there. So, for example, if I say, give me all the chats that you know about,
Uh,
it'll give me, like this long list
chat
of
one, chat two, chat three.
exactly, and then associated with group one, group two.
Okay, got it. Got it.
Okay, so they're basically like they're not. It's the compiler isn't really able to enforce that these paths are that, but it does make it easier for the reader to see what's happening.
I see. I see. Okay.
And so again, if I look at the SIR file here in my like custom app, I have like an action which I put up top. I could probably put it like lower down, and then you know I have all these types. Like band is a jug of resource to ship.
Banned from this resource
That's a
that
resource.
ship.
All the a set well set of ships. 'Cause it's a jug.
Why would it be a set and not a list there?
Um. Well, so think about it. Actually, why do you think? Why would I? What's the difference between a list and a set?
Oh, it's a set of resource and ship, and so you wouldn't have a
No,
list
no,
of.
no, no, no. That's not correct. So jug means map of this to
Oh, right.
set of
Okay.
this. So why would I want my band to be a set and not a list? Or what's the difference between a set and a
A
list?
set has two elements. A list has n elements, right?
No, a set can have n elements. A set is like a mathematical set here. Like it means
Oh.
the easy way to think of it is like I'll just say it. It means like no duplicates.
Oh, okay. Well, that's okay.
So when you so
That's very
right, so it's
helpful.
like you don't want your list to that. So yeah, whenever you have something that logically doesn't have duplicates, you'll want to use set.
I would not have derived that. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. It's a pretty common idiom. And so that's basically the idea of jugs. The reason they come up so much is that you often have something where it'll feel like you want a jar of a map to a list, but often what you really want is like a map to a set.
Okay. Okay.
In fact, I have here a map of path to ship to list. This should just be a jar, to be honest.
Let me
Like, I
see.
should update that and make it a jar.
Because a list of envelope, there can't be
They
duplicate
they're
envelopes.
unique. Yeah, although there's some reasons that I do this as a list, which is that I care about the ordering. That's
Okay.
probably why I did it. I did it like that. So probably this should be a jar, to be honest. Um, and that gives me some options because that jar has some nice functions to basically just be like, okay, take the key and put something at the head of it.
Okay.
That's all of right, which is like all of jar and jug logic. So jar, you can grab prepend to list. So you have jars have an add of like take the list and prepend something to it.
Whereas adding to a jug, it kind of just gets placed into one of those binary
Sets,
tree
yeah. So
sets.
sets exactly. So sets don't have any ordering
Got it.
guarantees.
Okay.
Yeah. So that is there anything else there? So you were asking about how to choose all this, but that's like a pretty much a discussion of how you start thinking about it here. This action is like all stuff that I want to do to the ship.
Yeah, I guess the only other question I had was I was looking at the perm upgrade function, and
Mm-hmm.
I think I get what's going on there, but I'm curious how deep you wanted us to go. Like I see that it's
Not that deep.
okay because it's complex. Like what's
Yeah,
happening
it
to
is.
okay,
I think I said like roughly, so just not that deep, but just like basically get the idea of what's happening.
and to confirm, basically what's happening is it's kicking everyone from everything that you have, and then reorganizing the groups and their resources in this new part of the bowl. Is that right? Like it's
I
making it
think
into one of
everything
those
except I
jugs.
think everything except for yeah, I have to check it, but I think everything except for bowl is right. So this one was in
Or I guess I should say a new
the
part of the
perm
state.
upgrade, right? In groups. Yeah. Exactly.
Okay, okay.
New part of the state. So it's basically like switching them. It was like there were managed and unmanaged ones, and it was getting rid of the idea of unmanaged groups, if I recall correctly.
Yes, okay. That's okay.
So it essentially had this big port to do from this old model where some chats were like unmanaged, not in groups, and then everything is groupified in that like whole new groups update that
And
happened
so
about a
that's
month
why
ago.
in there it takes the old chats and puts them into groups if available.
Exactly.
Mhm. Okay. All right. I kind of got that.
Cool. Yeah, it's not like so crazy. Um. Okay, let me get out of here. All right, let me just make sure. Oh crap. That's not good. Now my whole thing is gonna go down there. Um, that's pretty funny.
What happened? I wasn't looking.
I shut down my entire ship by accident with a
Oh,
Control
oops.
D. Yeah, it's not a big deal. I'll just put it up again here, let it replay or whatever. Okay, so we should go on to now, I guess, like today's lesson then on Peter and Scry.
Yeah.
Okay, so do you know what Scry is?
Well, we've talked about it a little bit. So scrying is like non-poking, but seeing into the state of an application.
Yeah, it's like it's like basically read only querying of either applications or agents, or
Okay.
sorry, not or of veins. It's like gonna screw me. Let me see. Might have like messed up everything here. All right, I'm gonna oh now it is letting me in. Okay, and that works. That works. It's just like see if this stuff is good. Reconnect over here, and it should be good.
I love that it reconnects now. That's so
Yeah, it's really
mint.
nice. I might just refresh there. Okay, so basically the idea is yeah that it's read only, and it basically lets you do any queries that the app itself exposes.
Okay.
Okay, so you're not going to be, or the app or the vein, you're not going to be able to just query random stuff. It has to be supported, and often that will be documented at like at the top of the file. Okay,
And those
so
are the
for
peak
example,
paths
actually,
there.
this metadata store here actually shows its peak paths, and we might have to look at exactly how they're implemented in on peak, but it does give us like an idea of like what's going on with each. Okay, so these are Y's like this. Okay. Okay, fair enough. And they just use noun.
So that YX stuff I don't get. Well, I assume we'll talk about that.
Yeah, yeah, we'll talk about it. It's basically a convention. It's not enforced within Gall.
Okay.
Okay. So that's probably the most important thing to start is that it's not enforced. Okay. So scry gives you this like special rune that can query like the Arvo namespace, which includes Gall, meaning other Gall apps. It's pretty fast. It's a read-only operation, so it's a lot faster than something where you have to kind of send a card and do an event to disk.
Okay.
Okay, so you can definitely use it and like think of it in the sense of like this can be like a pretty fast thing to do. Obviously, if it's returning a lot of data, like actually even a lot of data, like everything in a chat isn't going to be that slow. It's just that your processing of that could get a little bit slow.
All right.
Okay, but generally speaking, it's like you can think of it as like a very fast operation. Um, until you start having to recombine the stuff. So in terms of what it does, it takes a thing that is like spec and then some hoon to run. Okay, so basically the first part is going to be a mold that you run on the rest of the data, and the data itself. Now this is and then the query itself is going to have a form like below. Okay, it
Like a
depends a
vase.
little. Is it like a vase? So the query itself is not like a vase. So this isn't really I get it's more of like a which agent to query than it is a vase. Okay, so basically the first letter is going to be the Arvo vein, and the second one is going to be X or Y.
Okay.
Okay. And then the final thing at the end is going to be a path, which has like various conventions depending on whether it's X or Y. Okay.
All
So
right.
we'll look at some examples here. And then in all cases, it's going to start with like that, like a task, which is the vein letter followed by X or Y. Um, what is X? It's called technically called the care. That doesn't matter so much. It indicates sort of what it does. So technically, queries with I are supposed to produce a cage with mark arch and vase type arch. In practice, not all Gull agents do that. And you actually have to look at the agent. So you should be able to, in my opinion, according to current documentation, just use, like, assume it's an arch coming back.
Mm-hmm.
But, like, that's not the case in all cases. Okay.
Okay.
So the group indices thing here is actually indices, like that whole jug, into a vase.
Okay.
Okay. Queries with X, these are a little more structured. They produce a cage with the mark at the end of the path. Usually you'll use noun for this and then just kind of look at the mark look at the file itself to see like what you can convert the mark to. Okay, I think we'll look at some examples like real quick. Um, Okay, and then Arch is just a thing that starts off with like it returns either a file, like with a file's hash, or a dir thing, which is this weird structure of map of knots to nulls. Really, it's just like a list of like paths.
Okay. Knots to nulls. That's interesting. But
The best way to think of it is that it's either returning you like a file or a dir.
Right. Okay. That makes sense. A directory or a
Right.
file.
Okay. And I think there's some cases where it can return both, so you might have to check both.
Okay.
But general like that's the idea of what, because you can do weird stuff in Clay where you can have like like slash app slash timlook be a file, and then you can also have slash app slash timlook slash something be a file.
Right. Which would
Okay,
be like timluck
so there could
dot,
potentially be like
like in
so there could
yeah.
potentially
Sorry.
timlook dot or like timlook slash
Right.
index fat timlook fast index.js or something like that.
Okay.
Okay, so let's look at some examples. We're going to do these. I'm doing these to a group store, so I'm just going to add some like dummy files, some dummy data right here in the thing.
Okay.
Okay, so this is actually an example of using an action. I'll go over quickly what these are doing. Okay, but like we do like over here. Okay, so we go over here, and what I'm doing is I'm doing a group action, which is add group. This is the ship that it's on, me Zod, and it's called fake group. And then I'm just saying like you have to do a list of who's invited, and so I just do a bunt value of a set of ships. So
Got it.
essentially, no ships are invited, right? And then I go to it and I actually just say I do the group update mark and add members to this group that I just created, and this is basically
Oh,
the okay. So this is like
hold on a second. I'm losing you in and out. Let me just see what we're doing here. We haven't dropped any frames. I don't know why. What's
good.
it called is being kind of a pain in the ass. Zoom. So
Okay.
you were adding Zod, Timluck, and Dopzod to the group that you just created.
To the group. So now it has a few members, and this
Right.
is just so we can do some queries. Okay, so here we're gonna do some like Y queries, which is this is going to Clay, and this is just gonna say all the dirs and files in the root path. Okay,
Okay.
so there's no file, and it just gives us like all of my dirs. This is pretty similar to doing like ls.
Okay.
Okay, so it's got sir like yeah all these things sir ren mar ted sys testing license.
Got it. Okay.
Okay. So pretty straightforward. And notice that it has this thing of like fill is you. So here, what we're gonna do is we're again casting to Arch and doing GY groups or groups. It's useful to note here that the form, like for Clay, you use normal beak form when you're saying what you want. Okay. So I'm just using this like send to be like the root of like the current beak.
Okay.
Like when you just do then like this is exactly like doing ls send, right? Just like normal thing there. This one here is anything for Gall. You actually have to do it in this format, which is ship, name of the Gall agent, and time. Okay, so you can think of this kind of like instead of doing like desk has no meaning in Gall,
Okay.
right? So in Clay, you're doing it as essentially ship, desk, and time,
How,
right?
how do you know what
For
time you're
Gall,
querying
you're
for?
doing yeah, good question. So most often, what you'll do is you'll just have the time be now,
Okay. All right.
because what it does is if you do the time as now, it'll give you the state of the ship after like the latest change. Or actually, sorry, better way to say this. This is actually kind of important. Um, Gall doesn't, unless the agent implements it, Gall doesn't use the time.
Oh, so it doesn't matter what time you say.
So I think it doesn't matter. I need to double check, but I think it doesn't like matter, and we can actually verify that real quick.
Okay.
And then that should probably even go into the write up, where I look at like this right here because I actually should. Okay, so that would actually be a useful thing to document. Um, today is scry.md, and this will be like, does time matter for goal scry? For Clay, I can definitely confirm that it does, because the way that Clay works is it gives you the current revision of that desk um, after the time, the time, sorry, at or greater than the time you send. So
Okay.
essentially like the revision at that time, right?
Yeah.
How the file system was then.
Got it.
And if you mess that up, you actually can run into weird issues that I've had where I wasn't correctly updating my time, so I kept getting the, like, a prior version. So Clay definitely does enforce that, and you have to make sure if you want the current version to use the real now
Oh,
value.
that's
Okay.
weird. You were getting old clay revisions because. Okay.
Yeah, the reason was there was a specific reason actually, which is that, like, let's say if I just do metadata store debug bull, it keeps a byte here, which is when it was compiled.
Okay.
Okay, so in this case, this is like this was compiled on like August 21st, and I was using that value for some stupid reason instead of using actual like now. And
Okay.
so it was giving me like the thing. It was essentially giving me the thing when I had compiled my
Okay.
app. Okay, so just be aware that like Clay actually does use this. For Gall, what we're gonna do here is we're just using like tis to mean like the current time. Like we can use this in Dojo. You
Sure.
guys you guys have used this format a lot, I think, in Hoon School, right?
Not a lot, but I'm familiar with it, and that's how you used to query your what do you call it? Your base hash and stuff by referring to your ship with tis.
Exactly. So basically, there's a few ways we could do this. We could write something like um, Zod home. Probably can right now. Does it? Oh, wait, we need to do like, yeah. So this is actually like the same.
Makes sense. Yeah.
Notice how this thing, right? And then like tis just like inserts it for each part. So let's say I wanted to do like Zod, whatever the desk is, whatever the now is. Boom.
Are we using desks in any meaningful way right now? Like not
We're
you and
not for
I,
this
but
lesson. We are for this lesson. We're not using it. In urban in general, yes,
okay.
and probably like more so soon.
Okay.
For the purpose of this lesson, no.
Okay.
I'll probably try to do some more documentation on that later. Okay, so the key point here is that here's our, as we said, it's going to always be ship, Gall agent name, time, and then you do a path followed by a mark. Or sorry, just a path because it's a Y query.
Okay.
Okay, so group store. Let's just like open group store does have some scry paths. Here it's Y groups, and that's like a listing of the current groups.
Okay.
Okay. Um, so if we look at the on peak, it actually has them coming in here. And notice that it goes ahead here and it finishes by doing it sets an arch, a thing of type arch equal to something,
Mhm.
and then it goes ahead and throws it in here into a cage or a unit cage.
Why the unit?
Yeah, so the reason for that is that like we don't actually use it, and I'll go into this a bit later, but we don't use it in this, but like there is like supposed to be a meaning for each one, which is I think that like unit, if it returns like null,
Mhm.
then that just means that like the resource. Actually, let me actually look up. So this is like the what system are we using? We're using like scries. Those are in like, let me see, which document is that? It might be the Clay document. Um, that's actually really annoying. I actually, Gall. It might be in this one. Okay, scry. On peak scry. Yeah. Okay. If it produces like null null, then there's no data at the path and never will be. And if it just produces like the top level unit, we don't know yet whether there is or will be data at the given path. In practice, that like isn't used, and like you're gonna get an error. You're gonna get an error from if you try to like scry from a Gall app or from the dojo, and there's like it returns unit or null null. If it returns null or null null.
Okay.
So that's basically is nothing's there, and there's two different reasons it might not be there, but both of them are going to give you an error.
Okay. All right. Fair enough.
Okay. Main thing here to note though is that it does some stuff that's like a little bit weird, which is it gets the whole thing as an arch, it puts it into the vase as that, and so presumably even that type information will be there. But it puts the mark as a noun.
All right.
Okay. And the reason for that is that there's no mark for an arch.
Oh,
Okay.
okay.
So, and because this is just used internally, you basically have to either look at the documentation up here, or more often just go to the on peak and see what type is going into that vase in order to know what mold you should cast to. Let me give a concrete example, which is here. Remember how our first argument is the mold that we want to cast the result to?
Mm-hmm.
So this says basically whatever gets returned from here, cast it with an arch.
So there would be other cases where it might be something other than an arch?
That is correct, and I'll show you like one of those cases in a sec. So here we're gonna get this thing. I'll talk about how it gets filtered into Gall soon, but for now you can take my word for it that it basically passes this request into Gall where it's handled in on peak, and then it runs this logic to produce an arch.
Okay.
Okay, and we do this, which means our thing is an arch, and so we actually notice how we are successfully able to cast it. It says fill equals null,
Mm-hmm.
and then dir equals this, meaning that, and notice how this is our group that we created.
Right.
So basically what it's returning to us is here's your list of groups that this ship has.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
So now if I, and for example, if I go on to like actually like on timluc and do the same thing,
You presumably have more than.
i'm
Well,
gonna
you
i'm
have a
gonna have
couple
more.
groups. Yeah.
Well, it's gonna actually, even ones I'm in general, it's actually quite long.
Oh, okay. Okay.
And notice how there's like these different, like all these different ships.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And so those are all, so right, so it's like all, it's like that entire list of stuff. So it's like kind of cool. We just were able to use a scry to like get all this information without having to use like debug or something. um the reason that's important that we didn't have to use debug is this command works from within Gall apps.
Works from within Gall apps. You
So you
mean?
could just type, you could type this code. You would have to make a modification that you couldn't use equals or tis because that's a dojo thing. But I can also just use the name of the ship, which is Zod, and then I also could use like my now, which we could use bold.now
Mm-hmm.
if we were inside there. Oh, okay, so that doesn't work. What is it? That's interesting. What is it? It's error in poca, error in hood. So it doesn't seem to like something about this format, which looks fine to me. Maybe I should use Scott P Zod might be necessary, and then Scott DA no. Oh, there we are. Okay, so I just had to Scott this into like
Okay.
into knots. Okay, cool. Which is like a little bit weird to me that sometimes it works, because like this I think works if I do group store now. Yeah, so equals P for path, and then I should be able to do like P. Yeah, so it's not gonna right. I would have to do a thing to append to it. Yeah. Okay. But like, for example, groups. Yeah. So that should work. And then I'm just
Weird.
gonna go back up to. Yeah, it's a little weird. It just is bugging me, so I want to like test it to see if it works. I'm not sure why. Oh, it doesn't like that either. Okay.
Hmm.
So for whatever reason, when that should work, it should be a valid path. Not sure. Anyway, you often have to do that. You'll see that a lot of time when people are making paths with ship names or times times they'll run scud on them.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, but main thing is we were able to get this, and we also can see that there's nothing special about TIS. It's just this like short form here.
Right.
Okay, so here now we're going to do these X queries. This is all paths of all the chats that we're in. Okay, so I think this one might have like just nothing on here. And I'll show how this works in a sec. This is yes, that has nothing. So I'm actually going to just do some on timluc just to show. So this is going to be a bit long, and it's going to show me the paths of all chats that are in my chat store.
Sure.
There we go. So those are all the chats that I'm in. Cool. Reason now, what we can do is we should actually look at both the format of this and what chat store has. Okay, so here's chat store. I don't know if it puts its scries on the top. Yeah, so it has scries, but it doesn't list them up here because someone was lazy. So we have on peak. We
Yeah.
have on peak, and for on peak you pass a path, and here it has X all, X keys, X envelopes, X mailbox. So
Yeah.
I was doing X keys, which is we can see what happens here. It does key by inbox, and that basically gives you all of the keys in a map.
And
And inbox is well, we can look at it. So it's from store, which is Sir chat store.
what does the keys
Okay,
arm
so
of by do though? It just gives you the indices.
it gives you all the indices of the map,
Okay. Okay. Oh, and that makes
and
sense because it's going to
you
be
can
a
look this up and buy it.
right. Sorry, but
Exactly. So and this is a map of paths to mailboxes, so it's just going to give us all those paths,
got it.
which is in fact what it did up here. So that's kind of cool that we were able to like just look at that. And when I say just look at it, what I mean is that I was like, all right, I want to see what chat store exposes in scry. And so I'm just going to look at all the paths that it handles in scry, kind of like how we look at all the paths that something exposes in watch,
Mhm. Mhm.
right? And actually, let me check in my scry file if I gave this at the bottom.
But this
Okay, I
is
did. Yeah,
faster, and you're not subscribing to it
yeah, it's instantaneous. It's like a query, like if you do a database query in SQL.
because Gall apps are effectively both application and database built into one thing that updates itself.
Correct. And so scry is basically the database interface that like an app maker exposes.
When something returns this, it doesn't go through the onload action, right? That's only on recompiling of the Gall application.
That's correct. All it does is it returns this so that Gall can store the new state of the agent,
Okay.
with essentially whatever state updates were made, if any.
All right. Sorry to take
Right?
us on a diversion there. But
No, that's all good because this is essentially where all of this gunk, like this database, is stored, is in that agent that gets returned.
right.
Right? So it's actually worth kind of tying all that together. Now, notice again that we use the mark of a noun. But the thing we put in the vase actually does have a little bit more specific type information, which is that it's going to be like a list
Paths.
of indices. Yeah. Actually, I wonder if is it a set of indices? I think it's a set because if you think about it, the keys of a map are unique.
Oh yeah. Okay.
And so actually, if we go here and look at the map logic part and
Mhm.
look at keys, I'm pretty sure that it returns a for key the key. Where's key? Def del get.
They're gonna make you work for it, man.
Yeah, it's okay.
There we
Oh,
go.
then they go to Lussel. This is so bad. Whoever did this should be like, it's just
Uh,
bad. It's just bad, man. It's just bad. So anyway, but yes, I mean, they only do it for key. So anyway, but it returns a set of keys.
okay.
Okay, cool. And we can guess that a little bit because I wrote, now notice here that I basically manually went and figured out what key returns. So I'm like, the thing in this vase is a set.
Mhm.
So even though we're using mark of noun, because it is a noun, we can go ahead and cast the result to a set path.
So when you're casting, okay, I see. Yeah. All right. That's weird that you. It doesn't. Why wouldn't it send it back as a set path?
Um, I need to ask for the. Okay, so here's the reason. I think the reason is that scrying was they probably initially thought of it mostly as like kind of a clay type thing or other veins where it made sense that your data would return a cage with like a certain mark
Okay.
because clay is all marked data. Like
Yeah.
every file type has its own mark. And then they were probably like, oh, we should also use the same interface to
Oh, for
return stuff
Gall.
from Gall agents. And so then they were like, all right, we don't want to like deal with like what it would mean for every single of the thousand, literally I think hundreds or thousands, I think literally thousands of molds to have their own mark. That's dumb.
Okay.
Right. So then they were like, let's just put everything inside a noun, and then you can just document what's really inside that phase.
All right.
Essentially, we're throwing away the cage part because that's more for clay support.
Yeah.
That's probably the better way to say it.
It's a little lazy,
So
but all right.
yeah, yeah. Probably it's one of those things that's like, might be redesigned or cleaned up at some point. But for now, it's basically there's just this extra little bit of ceremony with noun, which does have a slight cognitive cost because I have to explain it
Right.
now.
Right.
But it's a little bit of a code smell. But there it is. And again, that's why sort of I think unit is also there because like that has more meaning in other contexts inside
Mm-hmm.
inside Arvo. Here, if it doesn't like if a Gall agent doesn't return anything, it's because it doesn't exist.
Right.
It's like something's bad about the query. So, but regardless, you'll often see stuff returned in this unit noun, and then the actual thing, which I know is a set. So I can put this. The key thing is that it gets me to this point.
Right. Okay.
Okay. Full group info for one group with noun mold and noun mark. So this is one where I'm just showing that we kind of can cast it just to noun if we want, but it's going to be kind of dumb. So here we do group store, we do groups, and then a certain group path. Okay, so I'm going to open up group store. Um, it does have an on peak for groups, ship, atom, atom. Okay, and that's what we have here: groups, ship, Zod, fake group, and the last thing is always the mark. You're pretty much always going to be just writing noun here for the reasons we just said.
Okay.
Um, okay,
Those atoms were confusing me earlier when I was trying to look at some of this because
okay.
I
So what
wasn't
we're doing,
thinking
we're
of
just
ships as an atom, but they
so we're
naturally are.
doing yeah. So atom is just in fact just anything that's not a cell, which is like we basically remember a path is just a
Mm-hmm.
list,
Mm-hmm.
right? So it's everything after ship is just atom, atom. Gall strips the noun and doesn't pass it along.
Why don't you think they specify the type of atom there? Like a ship could be a pet P. Why wouldn't they say that?
Uh, that is a good question. Okay, so the main reason is that I wonder if you let me just check whether that works because I just haven't even done
Oh,
that.
maybe because it
So
has to be a knot.
let me just see if I can match the two things. So let's
Okay.
just say um, timluc-3 null if it matches against atom null. Oh, right. I think I need to put this one first. Okay, cool. So that matches. And if I say the first thing is a cell, that won't match, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then let's see if I can. I'm going to change this to a ship name and try app P. And that does work. So, you know what? I could do that by convention a lot of the time. What they're really trying to do here is just show that these are like terms.
Right. Right.
And so they just do that because it's like everyone's just used to writing it that way. That they're like, because what they're really trying to differentiate here isn't the fact that it's a ship. Oh, and also, actually, well, there's an even better reason. It isn't a ship right then. It's a knot.
Right. Okay.
So that's the even better reason. But basically, when you're trying to like do that, like whereas, but I could do something like this. This should match. Yeah. If they're basically like, I want to make sure the first thing is an atom, and then there can either be you know atoms or a cell after. You'll often see this.
Okay. It's just
Okay.
it makes it harder to read for a dumb person like me. That
You'll get, I think you'll get used to it pretty fast where the distinction isn't between, you know, ships and other types of things. It's like, I know all the words up to here, and then I'm going to have two slots after that.
okay, okay, and then you just kind of have to think
You're for
about what you
this
need.
kind, yeah, and well, and more importantly, it's all going to be in not format anyway. So it would be pointless and impossible to even say to match what it is at that point.
Okay, I get it. I get it.
So then what they do is once they find out that it does match that, they have another function here inside in the resource library to go ahead and turn that like atom thing into a resource.
Okay,
Does that make sense?
it does. That's interesting.
Yeah, it's it's less interesting than it could be, but it's so here's this dpath soft,
Yeah.
which is what they're using. So it returns a unit resource. We can
Right.
already tell.
Right.
So hard dpath would be they just do you know need.
No. No, I've never seen need.
Need is super common, and you'll see it a lot. It's basically like it basically says if the thing is a unit, if the unit has a value, just return that value.
Oh, okay. All right.
All
Is
right.
that how you get the have and need when you run a generator and don't give it the right arguments?
Probably. Yeah. Yeah. Because if your thing is a unit, like it just crashes.
Interesting.
Oh no, it doesn't. Yeah. Well, basically the idea of it is it basically says, all right, I know this thing says it's a unit, but I know there's a value in that unit, so just give it to me and then crash if it's not there, but I know it's there.
Okay. All right.
Whereas soft here says, I don't really know yet whether this thing will work, so let's kind of, do it softly and return a unit. Then the upper code can check, whether the unit is valid.
And then that's exactly what it's doing after it's saying doesn't
Exactly
match the pattern.
the usual what sig, yeah,
Yep.
exactly. And that's cool. If not, it'll return like a null. There's nothing there, and this was essentially a bad query that'll throw an error, which we can see the results of that. It's like that's worth taking a quick look at. Um, let me copy this thing and show what happens. So this is going to work, and it's going to return that whole thing as a noun because I'm casting noun at the front,
Mhm. Mhm.
right? Okay, cool. But I could also do a bad path right here, which it will or will be something where it doesn't matter. So it has to do p. Okay. So I could do something like I could do it. This is an invalid ship name, so it won't work. It's not gonna let me do that. That's annoying.
You could try it with like a
Stupid
Z
Doja.
or something that wouldn't work, right?
It doesn't even. Wow, it's smart enough to not let me do Z
Wow.
and knows exactly there. Yeah. All right. Otherwise, I would have been able to do cool stuff. So basically, the soft one though is it tries all it like first checks if it's like in this valid format. If it's not, then it returns the null. Otherwise, it goes and says the ship is slaw this. And then if that doesn't work, or if that doesn't work, it's null. Otherwise, it returns the whole thing.
What does slaw do?
We can kind of guess right here. We have a like not coming in,
And puts it into
and it
ship
gives us
form.
a
Okay.
P here.
So it's the opposite of
Yeah,
like scotting
exactly.
something.
So slaw P. Yeah. Oh, that doesn't. Oh, except it returns a yeah, exactly. It's the opposite of scouting something. So there we go.
Okay.
Hmm? Oh, right, unit ship. Then there's also Slav, which is basically, yeah, I know this is gonna work, so just give me the ship and not a unit.
Okay.
And you'll see both of them. These are good to know because you often have to do these conversions from paths. Oh, that didn't wait. Slav P to work. Yeah, it worked. Oh, right, because it's not a unit anymore. It's just a P. Yeah. Okay. Cool. And so then this one, it's exactly the same thing as before. But I go ahead and import ser for group because I want to cast it to a unit group.
Okay.
And to do that, I need to have group and scope. I need to have that type in scope.
Makes sense.
Actually, let's go. Let's go. Yeah. So if I did this without it, if I just wrote group, it would fail and say couldn't find it. But if I do this, first I set G to that, and then I go back here, and I'm going to cast it to a unit of type group. And as expected, it's going to give me, that's this whole thing here, but in like a clean format. So all the meta information about that group.
Okay. Oh, hidden. You can have
So
hidden
this is already
groups.
getting pretty good because yeah. So basically, we're already getting an idea of how we could go ahead and query for like stuff if we got maybe we hit metadata store to figure out what groups there are, and then we just go ahead and start like querying each of them in turn to find out who all their members are.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And then this is what we're going to
Right?
want to really replicate with our actions in our application.
Exactly to the point where I'm gonna have to put like for doing like we're clearly going to be doing those scries, and you want to get them even like working at the dojo. So all this stuff up here is going to be useful for kind of playing around with the scries at the dojo
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
on your own ship. This is like you're going to do exact like modifications of all these scries to figure out like what's there. Now, dealing with ship and time, this is how we translate these experimental dojo scries into scries that you can do inside like inside your application. Does that make sense?
Wait, say. I'm sorry. Say it again.
In order to translate these like kind of dojo scries using TIS into scries you can use inside your application, you're going to need to, do a lot of this stuff.
Oh, I see. Yes. Okay.
Okay, so pretty straightforward. If we're calling from a Gall app, we use Bool to do this. So instead of TIS, you'll just use this like, cell Scott P R Bool. Then you do the agent name, and then you'll do, Scott DA now Bool.
Oh, this is saying if we're calling a scry from within a Gall application as part of the Gall application, not. I see, I'm tracking now. That's where I was not tracking.
Yep, exactly. In fact, I want to actually see if it like if this thing that I want to do here works, which is instead of using TIS here, I can do Scott DA. Interesting. So it doesn't like that. Um,
Trying to give it a default time.
I'm trying to give it like the lowest time. Okay. Um, I'll check that in a sec. Okay, so let's look at the mechanics of on peak because over here inside, like the stuff we were looking at with Chat Store, we were doing the peak, but the question is how these paths get into it, which is pretty straightforward. It receives a scry request with GX or GY.
Mm-hmm.
It translates the request and forwards it to the on peak arm, which we'll look at. It waits for that arm to produce a result, and then it processes the result. If it's valid, it passes it back to the caller.
Okay.
Okay, so Gall scries have this form we've seen a lot, which is like ship, agent, time, and then a path followed by a mark. Or for GY, it just doesn't do the mark part.
Okay. Right.
Okay, because it's meant to be an arch, or in some cases, you'll see it's a different type of noun. Um, so it translates this into Y example path and passes it to the on peak.
Okay.
So if we look at group store and look at its on peak, if we did this GY query from like up here, this one right here,
Yeah.
right? So that translates into sen Y and then the path groups.
Okay.
Okay, so and in fact we see it here. It matches that exact path.
Makes sense.
Okay, so that's how it translates that. It translates X's into um, into X example path, and it remembers the mark.
It remembers it.
It remembers it for step 3 when it processes the result to see if it's valid.
But it doesn't remember it in that cell that it's making there, right? X example path.
Yes, exactly. So Gall remembers it, but what it passes is the stripped version with just the path and an
Okay.
X.
All right.
Okay, so we have here the X group ship, for example, Adam, but nothing about at the end about what the mark was.
All right.
Okay, so inside on peak, I have an example app right here. I scry.whom, which is just kind of stripping all of this down to its lowest. So we can start in like Herbert is on home. Okay. Um, okay, so iScry is initialized. Okay. It matches against these incoming paths, and we match 3. So it has Y result, X friend, or X no result. Okay, and that's just we have a simple stupid state, which is just like friend equal is like a type ship.
Okay. Sure.
Okay, I could even take out the dot state and just do friend, and that should work fine. Um,
Does this mean you only have
yeah,
one friend?
yes. There's not a set of friends. You choose friend, and then you put friend in ship. Let me just grab some water.
Okay.
Um, Honestly, I think it's kind of decadent for people to have more than one friend. So this
Yeah, you're right.
program enforces a very like kind of Spartan friend ethic,
How
which
many
I think is really
useful
important.
idiots are you going to add into state one?
Yeah, useful idiots is like it's a list, not even a set. You can have like the same person there 7 times.
Okay.
Exactly. So yeah, no, Urbit. I think Coon is a very principled language that lets you really reflect in society.
Yeah.
What needs to be reflected, and this probably comes from like Curtis's like initial vision where there were like kings and earls and stuff like that.
It's
All of it
digital
just all gets
feudalism,
reflected.
man.
Yeah, dude, it's digital feudalism all the way down because everyone knows like one of the key components of feudalism was that everyone gets one friend. It's
Right.
like it's history. I can't really argue with it.
Right.
So we go ahead here, and I have stuck to the old ways and made like the Y an arch. Not all,
Helpful.
and like yeah, Group Store I think also does that. Chat Store doesn't have one. Metadata Store, we can look at its on peak. It has a Y group indices, but it is a bad boy for group indices and app indices and does not make it an arch.
Why would they do that?
So I was saying that I haven't asked them about this. You can if you want. I think that like this whole system of what scribes produce is a bit legacy and very like clay oriented. And so I think they just decided like, look, everybody knows that like scribes are turning more into this like all-purpose database type thing.
Yeah.
And so we might as well just be honest and like no one wants to like receive their group indices as an arch and then like get all those knots out of that map. We should just return them group indices.
Well, why wouldn't you just make it an X then?
That is a good question.
Okay.
And there's not even like necessarily like notice for associations here they do it like that.
Yeah.
There's
Yeah.
not there and it's returning the entire jug here. Yeah, it should honestly I think it should be an X, but the whole thing is a bit like wonky and like I think the answer is probably that like everything should be an X in Gall,
All right.
but
I guess.
it might be. It's honestly probably people did it, and whoever was reviewing the code either didn't have a good reason, or there's some like upcoming change I don't know about. They kind of want to be ready for.
Okay. All right.
But yeah, conceptually, really, in my opinion, like these should all be X's, especially when you're returning a whole jug. I get the idea in Group Store where they're like, okay, we are returning an arch, and what we're really returning here is kind of a list of paths. Like, I can
Fine.
kind of get behind. I can get behind that. Or a set of paths. I get what they're going for, but the other ones, yeah, there's no real reason for that. So here I return this thing. I say I'm very nice to the user, and I tell them it's going to be an arch,
Yep.
and then I go ahead here and I give the mark as an arch, which actually that might be like wrong. Is there an arch mark? There's no arch mark. I don't think. Well, it seemed to let me do it when I did it. So let's take a try and try doing it. So it does let me do this, and it works. Really, though, from what I've seen in other stuff, this should be a noun just because of how everything works. And then here it returns your friend with a ship, kind of as we expect, because I cast it to a ship because I know it's that. And this one is going to crash because it returns no result, meaning it just returns like null null. And
Okay.
so Gall, what happens is that null null does return to Gall. We're not crashing at this point, but Gall interprets that as a crash.
It would also interpret a single null as a crash, pursuant to the conversation we had about Gall,
Yes,
right?
that
Or about
that's
scries.
correct.
Okay.
That's correct. So processing the result, it returns it directly to the caller. If it was a Y scry, it just goes right back. It just goes right back to the caller. If it was an X, it runs the mark passed at the end of the path, although that's almost always noun anyway, and then returns it to the caller, which runs the mold. So ship GX scry friend is passed to onPeak as X friend.
Mm-hmm.
It returns friend.state inside a noun cage. Because it's a ship or an at P, our mold of ship succeeds and it returns timluc-miptev. We could also just pass a mold of noun. I want to change this the rating here. Mold of noun like this noun, and that would return the number of the noun, which makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
So on peak returns unit cage. We already said null meant maybe existing, and null represent null null means that the value does not and will not exist. So in either case, Gall produces a crash.
I,
Okay.
so from the clay example, does not and will never exist. That's like a force of file structuring or something like that. Is that why that's less applicable in Gall? Because like,
Yeah, exactly.
all right,
Okay. So generally in Gall agent source, generally meaning I probably should just take out the generally and say like always in Gall agents, um, you'll see X queries use a noun mark,
mm-hmm.
and the caller will look at the source or documentation to know what type is really inside the vase and pass that type as the mold to
Okay,
.kit. Okay, so as you're seeing, that's not really that hard because all you have to do is go to the on peak, see which thing gets put into the vase, and figure out what type that thing is.
right.
It's a little bit manual, but to me, this isn't so much work right here.
No,
I
it's not
think
too bad.
the main thing is just knowing that that's a thing that you can do and that it's that straightforward. Okay.
Makes sense.
So understanding on peaks of other Gall agents is a big part of Gall development. And a lot of the time, as we're doing for our example app, there's a lot of things you want to make that are query existing data and do something. Like we saw, back in the day when I first joined Urbit in Hooniverse, there were a lot of requests for kind of like chatbot apps that could automatically add people to groups if they posted in a chat.
Right.
And I think we can see now, what would be the basic idea of how you would do that? Like, let's say you have this little chatbot app.
It could. Okay, so it could scry for
Mm-hmm.
envelopes. I guess like so the way that I'm trying to think about how the structure of
Yeah. So well actually let's make that into a question. How would you figure out the structure of what's in chat store?
we should go to its SIR file and look at the state,
Yep.
and
So
there's
it has inbox, which is paths of mailboxes.
in a
So
mailbox.
we knew our chat, if we knew our chat path, we could just scry for that particular chat.
Yeah, yeah.
And in fact, if we look at chat store, we see that it has all. So it can actually on peak, yeah, it has all. It can just jam the entire inbox into a return value.
Oh, and that will give us the paths and the mailboxes, which is the list of the envelopes or something like that. Is that right?
Yeah, or maybe you already know the path of the chat, where we get it from keys. And then what you do is you just scry for the entire mailbox, cast it as an inbox,
Okay.
right? We can well, I mean, we can let's go ahead and just build that query right here. So we'll just make a thing down here where we'll just build the code for it. So it'll be .cat. We already know the thing we're oh, and then just as a hint, you're very often gonna want to say I'll just do this. Remember how we have to do this if we're doing stuff with the dojo? We
Right.
have to import the thing. So build file, sir, chat store.
And this
So
is
let's
to
go
put our
ahead.
make our types available to us.
Correct. So we've
Right.
done that. And if we even look at store now, we'll see it has all of our good stuff available. Those nine arms,
Right.
which actually probably exactly correspond to this. Okay. So that's cool. So now we kind of what type do we want to cast our return thing to?
Do we want it as a mailbox?
Yeah, or as an inbox.
Oh.
We want
Oh.
it as an
Okay.
inbox, and
Right.
now the way we know that, because you wouldn't remember this, but we just look at all, and it jams a
An
mailbox
inbox.
into, I mean, sorry, an inbox into the base.
Okay.
So inbox store, pretty straightforward. It's going to be a GX query, which we see over here, right?
Mm-hmm.
And now we actually know our GX query. We can keep using this TIS thing for convenience, right? So TIS chat store. This is basically our ship and now,
Right. Right.
right? And then we see the path is all, and this is one thing to remember. You always put noun at the end. Let's actually look at what happens if we don't put noun at the end, because I should just give an error right away. Yeah, so unexpected scry
Huh. Okay.
on path.
Because it wasn't
Okay.
able. It wasn't able to do that. Um, the thing where it parses that. Is that right?
Yeah, basically, it's Gall is always expecting there to be a mark at the end of a next query. Hello?
Yeah. I'm with you.
You there?
Sorry. I was thinking about the soft unpack or whatever we saw earlier and wondering if that applied here, but it doesn't.
No, it's just literally it's just a really mechanical thing where Gall translates the path mark
And it
into
just remembers
X
it.
path.
Okay.
It just
Right.
yeah, it just remembers the mark and then casts it at the end. So if we go here now, this should work. It's good. This is going to be a well. No, we won't have. Oh, fine. Wait, it can't. Oh, that's funny. So if you have one of these errors, it'll wipe your faces very often. It
Oh.
actually wipes your faces up. Just so you know, if you get this, that's a thing. So
That's
now we're gonna
interesting.
run this, and notice here, this is, I guess, a good result. We got our mailbox back, and it has nothing in it.
Okay. Fair enough.
Now we could kind of go up here and start doing some of my stuff where I can okay, here's a list of all my chats
Mm-hmm.
right here, and I can just take a random one right here. I don't want my thing to be too big, but I can go ahead and inbox GX chat store all. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna set this to a face, and
Okay.
then we'll go and we'll get something out of the return value. Okay, so first we put store there just so we have it, and then what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go ahead and get everything. So let's just call it the face all, or result.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, R, and so this is gonna hold the whole thing. Cool. That presumably worked. I don't want to hit it because it's going to be a really big thing.
Right.
Now notice that was really fat. That was really fast to do.
Yes.
Okay, and that's because it's just accessing the stuff in memory, which is really really quick. But having the dojo print it all out would be very slow because printing is a fairly slow process in Urbit.
Okay.
Okay, so just keep that in mind. Now if we go back and look at our serve, we can see that our inbox is just a map of path to mailbox. So let's take something here that's pretty, you know, pretty small. I don't want to put people's DMs out. Yeah, like a lot of the stuff I have here is going to get like quite large. Um,
Fit's not terribly
I
big
should
right
almost
now.
like
Not web, not buds.
fit
Fit.
or fit.
No, no, the
Yeah.
that one
Oh, fit.
or lit even.
Yeah,
That
I
one's
just
even
don't. I
smaller, I
don't.
think.
I don't. Yeah, I don't like putting people's private like
Okay,
stuff on
fair
there.
enough.
Just as like
Well, you can do Urfit if you
from
want.
principle. Although I put. Yeah, what's the thing? What's the code for fit?
I don't know what the number is offhand. I'd have to look. Sorry.
Yeah, because I wasn't saying. Well, we can. Yeah, that's all good. So we can do. We can just do like Urfit here. So it's up here. So it's reps. Okay, it's just reps of Bikram
Oh,
Urfit.
okay. There we go.
So these things are like these type of paths. So we should be able to say something like the like get by, and we called this thing R. Get by an R, and it's going to be if we look up the thing, it's just a map of path to mailbox. So it should be like reps of Bikram. Do you say Bikram or Bikram?
I say Bikram, but it should be Bikram.
Bikram. This is Bikram slash Urfit. So this is gonna be, and if we look, this is gonna be like a lot of stuff, but
Right.
screw it. So now it's like going and printing the entire chat because mailbox is a config and then a list of envelopes.
So
So
what's the
all the list of
config?
envelopes going back to the
I guess
config
we
is
could
just a
look.
type called config, which is length. In fact, that's what we should have done, which is we should have gotten the config instead of doing this.
Right. Okay.
So we're still like kind of going, which we don't really want. Oh, okay, cool. I can do. Oh, I might have like okay. So in fact, let's just do a new R like let's call it just M for the mailbox.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, cool. And so now we should be able to do stuff like config.m once my thing comes back. Config.m. Oh, fine config.m. Our M should have a config. Hmm. Oh, wait. Is it a
Is it a config per envelope?
No, it's just part of the mailbox. That should be there if M had a result. And if I type M, it's gonna like I'm not sure. Like
Can you do the
I know
head of
in
him,
code this would.
or is it? That's not a cell, is it?
That's not a terrible idea. No. So does M not have anything? Oh no, it has a lot.
It tricked you into doing that again.
Yeah. Oh crap! I keep like typing this. All right. Anyway, I'm gonna say this is like a nice thing to you can do a lot of this experimentation like very easily inside like a Gall agent. But I do think it's worth kind of showing how to do this. So I do want to like actually I probably have a private DM with you at some point. Let me check something here. If I just have any DMs with like anyone random. Okay, I have one with you here, so here you go. This is going in the thing, so let's do a new like
Just never gonna let you
come
out
on.
now. I'm surprised that it handled that request to change screens and landscape when you're locked up like that.
Yeah, you're right. It's doing. All right, you know what?
Multi-threading. They built in multi-threading while no one was looking.
Yeah, I'm building in crashing my like ship while no one was looking. While no one was looking. All right, let me go back up here and like rerun some stuff.
Do you like running Urbit King for any particular reason?
Just because I want to be cool and run the new thing. There's not like a great. Just to give feedback on it.
Okay.
It does a weird thing where it builds up like a really big event, like useless like king log, that like periodically crashes my ship when it runs out of space.
Sick.
So, so I'm canceling here. All right, you know what? This is bad TV. So.
We've had worse TV, buddy. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, I want to I want to actually keep moving through here.
Yeah, sure.
And a basic idea is that if I hadn't been dumb and used like a smaller chat there, I could get some like nice little results. That's the takeaway. And we should do like up here. Okay. Um, so because they're often undocumented, we're gonna. I just want to I just want to walk through the on peak arms for group store and chat store, but we already did this pretty significantly in terms of looking at what group store matches and what they do.
Yeah. Okay.
And same with chat, and then same with chat store. It only has X queries, which are these ones, which we've seen them working, and how I can retrieve their values and use them to successfully crash my ship. Or oh, here now it's printing out everything. It's replaying the event. It's
Sweet.
printing out every single thing in Urfit that ever happened. I saw the word liquid chalk, um, and something about something like yeah, whatever. Now it's like mostly like Fawn talking about like how she's like getting thick. So that's Urfit for
I
everyone.
hear that she
Everyone who
wobbles.
wants to know. Yes, exists. She's very excited about this progress. So that's honestly, most of it. I think with like the fact that this is working vindicates everything that I've shown to this point. There is an X config, which is you can just only retrieve like the config of the mailbox to see the length of it and the unreads, and that is in right here.
All right.
It'll
That's
go ahead and just it'll basically just like notice how it matches. It starts with config and then has a noun, and
yeah.
so basically it checks and it makes sure that like that tail of the tail isn't null, and if it's not, it goes ahead and uses it as a path to first get the mailbox and then check whether the mailbox like exists, and if it does, it gets the config out of it.
Why is it
So that
asking for
actually would have
config from you from mailbox? That might have been our issue with doing config.mailbox.
no, no, I don't know why it does it like this, but we could actually do this for Urfit, which is we have our R.
Right.
And we can say C, or actually even better than R, we should just use like here and say chat store. Um, mhm. Instead of all for our R, we're going to do chat store config, and then we should be able to do repsef Bikram. Nothing works. Repsef Bikram Airfit.
Yep. No
Yep.
number.
And because this is like fairly short, I can just do it like this. And I crashed. All right, because I did something weird here. Okay, here, dude. Oh, I know what it is. I know. I'm using the Emacs hotkey for like delete, but that like is also Control D. So
Oh.
scry lost. Okay, so it's having some weird. Oh, I know what it is. It gave me an error there, which is good to know. And the reason it gave me an error is because I was trying to cast it to a mailbox and not to a unit, and not to a config.
Okay, so you'd need to cast it to config. You'd need to add store in, which is using that
Exactly.
build.
So first I can do right. So now we can kind of go back through here. And we're going to just do this, which is instead of casting it to an inbox store, we're going to cast it to a config store.
Mm-hmm.
Chat store config slash Urfit. And again, notice we have to do noun at the end because it's a GX.
Yep. But it'll
And we
come
go
back
here.
as one of the other things.
And there you go. Length is 2,847 messages, and they're all read by me.
Nice. Nice.
Okay, so just like yeah, so like it does work. Our main barrier here was printing, and the key thing is that even getting that mailbox was like a really fast operation. So processing everything like you get from a scry could be a very long operation that you don't want to repeat, and this is important to remember for the chat admin app if you're retrieving all the stuff that people have said in the past.
Mm-hmm.
But just getting it and then maybe doing some fast operation with it, like maybe counting everything in the chat, could be quite fast.
Or checking the like if the each envelope has a name and a date, you could then say when was the last one where this person said something or something like that.
Yeah, exactly. Or like another fast operation would be scry for every message that's here, and then for every user, get the number of messages they've sent in the last week.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Right.
Okay, so all these things are pretty fast operations, and just the initial fetching of that will be of that thing in the scry will be quite fast. And the way Urbit's memory is set up, it's not going to trash your memory inside your Urbit. That'll just happen in like a transient, inner part of memory, which we can, easily hold this amount of data, and then it'll delete it all when it's done, except for what you save.
Okay. Okay.
Okay, so just for like you're not going to have like memory leak issues doing stuff like scrying everything that ever happened in the chat. It just isn't that much data.
As long as you don't try and print it.
Yes, because then that starts like using a lot more data to like print each thing. There's a lot of formatting and checking that goes on with the print, and so that takes each of those things and makes it like very slow.
How interesting.
Because the way to think of it is that when you're just getting the data, Urbit itself doesn't have to process any operations. It just gives you the data, and then maybe runs like a check on it to like fit it all into like various types.
Right.
But
Right.
it was already in the vase, so it was already in that format. Whereas when you start processing it, each thing could maybe take like a thousand times longer to do something,
Okay.
and each of those prints is like an event that gets logged. So just bad things start to happen at that point. Actually, let me check my king log here. Yeah, it's already up to 1.5 gigs. I need to make something to like automatically delete this because I really don't like the king log.
Can you not turn it off with an argument? That seems odd.
Probably I can, but they don't think they have like a help for it. So,
Naturally.
oh no, it does. Bruno do command. There's other commands that are definitely not listed here, like a lot of other commands. So probably there's something that does that. Okay, but anyway, I think we've gotten like a pretty good feel of both like writing our own and how that's straightforward, and then really we've done a lot of the most important thing, which is reading other on peaks. So I think like it's going to take some practice, but I think you're going to start to get a feeling that like, oh, these things are actually like pretty straightforward to use, and to get information from others.
Okay.
Okay,
Okay.
so I'm going to add some like chat admin exercises,
Yeah.
but the code reading exercises are not exactly code reading here. They're also writing your own scries.
No, that's cool though, because that'll be really great practice for me. Because I've always found that format, even just the dot ket for some reason throws me. So like seeing it and being able to write these will really solidify the understanding of what we just went through here.
Definitely. And I think, to be honest, this lesson probably gets even underplayed, but this is, in my opinion, one of the most underused and most interesting long term like things in Urbit, which is the ability to like get all of the data that you have on your ship and like integrate it into using apps to control it.
And why is this better than poke for that purpose in what you've just described?
Yeah. So for one thing, it's more exploratory.
Okay.
It's a lot easier to like use these commands to like kind of stitch them together and see what's there. But often, pokes don't automatically return data. They can,
Mm,
but often you're using like watches, and then
mm-hmm.
you kind of have to like write a whole agent to do the watch and see what's there, right?
And
Whereas
then
this
run
is like you
debug
can
on it.
just yeah, this is like you can just do it in the dojo, and I think you're right. Here's the reasons. One is you can just do that in the dojo, but you can also do that for debug and see what it has in its state and query it. So it's not a huge advantage, not that big one at all. But the really big thing is that if you successfully write a scry in the dojo, like we were doing for config there or for the mailbox,
Mm-hmm.
you can just take that scry and basically cut and paste it into an app.
Sure, as a data type, and then
So
you could use it.
as a as like a command that you're using, and then you can start to use it to like for example, if someone wanted to make that like chatbot app, that would be like hard to do. If you were just using debug, you'd be like, oh, I can see when people have posted, but I can't automate it. What Scry lets you do is it lets you take all the data in your system and make it automatable from like yet another agent that you write.
Okay. Okay. I can see how that would work now. You could do maybe once every 4 hours, have it scry, see what it
Exactly. Exactly. And there's a lesson later for Gall 201 which just shows how to do those timers, although they're not even that hard. You could probably just read the lesson now and
It's
figure
a
it out.
Ben one, right?
Uh,
I think I've done that.
yeah, it's a Bane one. Yeah,
Or
it's not
Bane,
hard.
yeah.
And there's I have some examples here, Ben. Yeah, and like yeah, you could just run something every how often and then do stuff with it, right?
Yeah.
And so that's the advantage over. It's not even the advantage over poke. I mean, you might well have a poke that's like, okay, I poke my agent and then I want it to do these do these scries on other agents.
Right, right. Huh. Okay.
So scry lets you like pull in data and then use it programmatically. That's the big thing. So whenever anyone's talking about automating something in Urbit, that's what they want to do,
Okay.
right? They want to import data and then use it programmatically. So
Right.
scry plus subscriptions are how you do that. You can use either one of them, and sometimes you'll combine them. But for anything that's like, I want to know how many messages people wrote in the last like hour or last week, yeah, that's like great for a scry. The key thing about them is like they're very cheap to do as long as like you don't have expensive processing. So
We
cheap to mhm,
we
go
mean cheap in terms of
fast,
operation.
cheap
Right.
in terms of memory.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's like low memory, fast to pull in the data, can be expensive to process all of it depending how you do it.
Okay.
So you want to make like choices. Like it is slow to like go through every message that everyone has ever written and maybe add that to like a list,
Yeah.
right? But it's cheap to like just be like, oh, like just go through and count how many messages they've written in the last week because you can stop going through the list once you get to a certain point, and the operation you're doing is a lot cheaper, which is increment a number,
Okay.
rather than add something to a list which has to like reallocate the list very often,
Right.
or at least allocate some memory.
Yeah, especially if you're trying to build onto the tail of the list or something like that.
Yeah, exactly. If you're just doing it on the head, it could be pretty fast. Even that, I've tested it. It gets a little slow to like take every chat I have on my computer, on my Urbit, and like add all of the messages to a list that's done per user.
Right. Yeah. No, that would not be.
But it's not that slow because it is just adding to the head of the list each time, so it's not too bad.
And you
Or
couldn't make.
actually, I take that back. It's like you have to flop the list at least once, and then yeah, then you're just adding to the head.
And you couldn't make it a set because some people like me say the same things over and over.
Well, actually, each of those messages has a timestamp, so it could
Okay.
be a set. The
Okay.
problem is, yeah. Well, so here's the problem. If we actually look at the mailbox structure, and I'll just go on a little bit here just to look at this.
Yeah.
But if we look at the Sir chat store structure for a mailbox, it's a list of envelopes, and each envelope has an author. So one thing I wanted to do when I made my chat admin program is I wanted to make a map of. Actually, I can like look at it right here, but it's a. Um, I wanted a map of path and ship, like meaning this is the chat that the user's in, and this is the user.
Right.
In fact, I should call ship user here. I should make like a. That's just like a change I should make right now. There should definitely like very obviously be a type called user. But I'll do like
You
okay, so add that.
even have
Right,
that
but
in
I,
ban.
yeah. So like a path and then path like add usership and then like chat path equals path. Like I should use that convention. But anyway, I wanted to have a map that goes from like user
Hmm.
to like the messages they wrote in order.
Hmm.
And so that requires going through the entire chat. And each time you find like a new message, you have to
Do these.
insert it into there. There's no way to just take all of them because they have different authors.
Yeah. Okay. That's interesting.
Right. So I basically do that as like a one-time operation where the first time a user asks about that or that our admin program asks about that chat, it adds all of those in, and then after that, from that point on, it just subscribes to the chat store and handles like, incremental new messages that come in.
Oh, that's smart.
There's little optimizations like that you can make.
Do you think it's at all difficult for it to do that first one? I mean, like it can get through
The
doing
I've
it.
tested the first one. It can get through it. It's just like a couple seconds.
Okay,
So it's like, and there's a lot of stuff like this where it's like stuff you wouldn't want to do every time, but it's acceptable for like, when the app is first installed or like the first time someone uses it. You just wouldn't want it to be like every time they use the admin, it would grind.
got it.
Yeah. So stuff like that. I'm gonna make the exercises regarding the chat app mostly being like figure out the scries you would need and have them in a working dojo form. And then to translate from dojo form, all you do is translate those tisses into like, Scott PR bowl like we have here.
Which is not too bad.
Yeah, I mean the bowl is always accessible, so it's really this is pretty trivial as far as such things go.
Yeah.
All right. Anything else?
No, we're gonna see again on Monday. To go through this.
Tuesday, same
Right,
time.
that's right. Yeah, I forgot what day we do this on.
So
Yeah.
yeah,
Okay.
Tuesday same time. The first part of the exercises are already up here, and then I'll add the chat admin specific ones.
Okay. And then yeah, that sounds good.
All right, sweet. That was pretty fun. I'll talk to you guys in the chat, and in chats that don't exist, and I'll talk to you later.
All right.